Have you ever heard about Bob the bumblebee? Well, Bob was no ordinary bumblebee. He was a bit of a legend in his buzzing little meadow. Known for his clumsiness and his knack for getting into mischief, Bob was quite the character. But one sunny morning, Bob decided to step out of his comfort zone, to explore beyond the familiar meadow. He zigzagged through the air, his wings humming with anticipation. Then, out of the blue, he spotted it, the most enchanting flower he'd ever laid his compound eyes on. A radiant, multicolored daisy, practically screaming for a visit. Bob, buzzing with excitement, charged towards the flower. But alas, his enthusiasm got the better of him, and he crashed headfirst into the flower, sending petals scattering in all directions. "Oops," muttered Bob, as he shook off the pollen from his fuzzy head. But Bob wasn't one to be easily discouraged. Dusting off the pollen, he continued his adventure with an even greater determination. With a buzzing spirit, Bob stumbled upon a patch of wild strawberries. His tiny eyes sparkled with delight at the sight of the juicy red fruits. His wings fluttered faster in anticipation of a sweet feast. But alas, Bob's excitement got the better of him. Instead of a gentle landing, he tumbled into the patch with a puff of dust, squishing the strawberries beneath him. "Whoopsie-daisy!" he exclaimed, his voice muffled by a mouthful of strawberry pulp. Bob dusted himself off, and not one to be deterred by his mishaps, continued his exploration. He soon found himself amidst a fluttering kaleidoscope of butterflies. Their wings shimmered in the sunlight, creating a mesmerizing dance of colors. Bob, ever the adventurer, decided to join their elegant ballet in the sky. With a determined buzz, he attempted to mimic their graceful movements. But Bob was more of a bumbler than a ballet dancer. His attempt at grace turned into a whirlwind of dizzying circles. He crashed into branches, sending leaves flying. The butterflies scattered in surprise, their graceful dance disrupted by Bob's chaotic waltz. Bob came to a stop, his head spinning. He looked around at the fleeing butterflies and the leaf-littered ground. Despite the chaos he'd caused, a soft chuckle escaped his lips. "Oh, what a day!" he laughed, his voice echoing through the meadow. Despite the dizzying circles and fleeing butterflies, Bob couldn't help but laugh at his own silliness. As Bob buzzed along, he found himself face to face with the most enormous spider he had ever seen. Our brave little bumblebee Bob wasn't one to get frightened easily. Instead of flying away, Bob decided it would be fun to play tag with the spider. With a joyful buzz, Bob zoomed around the spider, laughing as he skillfully dodged its attempts to catch him. But Bob's notorious clumsiness had a way of catching up to him. In the midst of his playful game, Bob made a clumsy move. He accidentally flew straight into the spider's web, getting tangled up like a spaghetti noodle. The more he buzzed and squirmed, the more entangled he became. The spider, watching this spectacle, couldn't help but chuckle. "You're quite the silly bumblebee," it said, shaking its head in amusement. With careful, delicate movements, the spider started to free Bob from the sticky web. Bob, embarrassed but unharmed, thanked the spider for its help. As he flew away, he realized something important. His clumsiness, while often getting him into trouble, also brought laughter and joy to those around him. Maybe being clumsy wasn't such a bad thing after all. Upon his return to the meadow, Bob shared his adventure with his fellow insects. They laughed and buzzed in amusement at Bob's tale, and from that day on, they affectionately started calling him Bob the Bumbling Bumblebee. And so, Bob's clumsy escapades became legendary tales, proving that even the clumsiest of creatures can find joy in life's little mishaps. The meadow was always filled with laughter and buzzes of excitement as Bob continued to stumble and bumble his way through life. And while he may have been a bit of a klutz, Bob the Bumbling Bumblebee was also the happiest bumblebee in the entire meadow.